Okay, you're all now been recorded, so behave. Right, here we go. View. Okay, start again. So everyone, welcome to the first WVD User Group, UK edition. We'll do some introductions, give you a bit of history, and then we'll go into the presentations. If you've got any questions, just feel to pop them in the chat as we go along, and we'll do our best to answer them. So here's the agenda that we've got for today. So myself and Kirk, we are going to give an introduction to the user group. I'm going to do a session on what's new with WVD and the Spring Update. Then Kirk's going to do a presentation on the easy way and quick way to deploy WVD architecture. And then we've got Shabaz Darr, who's going to give us a presentation on WVD in the pandemic, which should be how it helped WVD in an NHS trust deal. So that should be quite an interesting one. So we'll do the introductions. So yourself?
Deal, which screen are you sharing?
My main screen. Is it the wrong one?
I can see your team screen.
Yes. It would be nice to see the other screen as well, Neil.
Yeah, it's all right. More actions. Hang on. So can you see my full screen now?
I can see myself from your view.
You need to stop sharing and reshare again.
Yeah, stop sharing. Share. And I'm gonna share this one. No?
Let's have a look.
Oh, that's much better.
Perfect.
I think it's still in presenter view now, but
Is that better?
yeah, the only
Okay.
thing is that it's in presenter view, so it's not the slide view.
Hang on, let me just swap them.
How many techies does it take?
Well, I did tell you that this is the very first time that I've done this. So
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, you're
that better?
doing great, Neil. Don't worry.
Okay.
That's
again.
just MVPs bashing each other, so just ignore that.
Yeah. Right. Start again. So my name's Neil McLaughlin. I've been around for a while. 23 years in IT. My current job is a senior Citrix and WVD architect. I work for a company called New Signature in the UK. We are a cloud-only company, which is why I went to work there. We won UK Partner of the Year last year, so very proud of that. Spent the past 10 years focused on Citrix virtualization and VDI, and 12 months on Azure and WVD. I'm the co-founder of the WVD community and also the co-founder of the UK WVD User Group, which you're at right now. I am also a Citrix CTA, which I was awarded last year, and I am a brand new 2-day-old Microsoft MVP. So I got that a few days ago, so very, very happy about that. You can find me on Twitter, Virtual Mike, or the WVD community website. I've also got a website, virtualmike.co.uk, wvdcommunity.com, where you'll find me, and also there is my LinkedIn profile. So that's me, and over to Kirk.
Thanks, Neil. So yeah, for those of you that have never met me before, there's a running joke that you'll end up calling me Ryan at some point. So yeah, my name's Kirk. I've spent 16 years in IT. I'm a principal technologist, and I work for both NetApp and Microsoft in a weird, funky way. So I work for NetApp and paid for by NetApp, but I have I work very closely with the Microsoft teams, so like the likes of Tom and the GBBs and those across all the advanced workloads. So nice to be here and to help out with this user group. I regularly present, so you may have seen me at some of the Ignite or Insight or other conferences when we were allowed to see other human beings face to face. And my focus has primarily been around sort of data-centric platforms. So, and some of you might know NetApp as a storage company. It's changed very, very much in the last sort of 2 or 3 years. And yeah, that's sort of my background there. So 9 years at NetApp, and the rest I was on the customer side. So just building and architecting and having all the same stresses as you'd normally have, sort of thing. So you can reach me on Twitter, or you can ping me on that the email there, or just search for my name on LinkedIn, and you'll find me there as well.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to go through now, I'm just going to go through a bit of history about how we've got here, basically. It's been quite an interesting journey, a journey that was started off in April this year, just only 4 months ago, which is still crazy to think about. So I'm going to give a shout out to Christian Brinkoff, who basically gave us this idea. So I initially just created a newsletter because I looked at, there was no really WVD community stuff out there, so I decided it's a great one. So that's where WVD community came from. So the domain was registered, as you can see, on the 12th of April. So and it's grown into 9 user groups worldwide now. So we've got 9 separate countries who are hosting WVD communities. We've got over 1,000 Twitter followers, 15,000 page views on our website. We've got a Slack channel where we share WVD news too, so you can go on that, and if you chat to other WVD people if you want to. Tom Hickling's in there as well, who also helps out a lot. If you've got feature requests that you want to put into the product team, Tom helps you to do that in there as also, so it's worth signing up for. I've got the link to that a bit further down on the slide. We also created a podcast, which has been very successful. We're on episode 9 at the moment, and we've had over 800 downloads of that, so that's been fun. We've got 18 newsletters that we've published so far, so we publish those every week on a Sunday without fail. That's been quite good. So yeah, hoping we're going to grow even further, but we'll see what we can turn into. So the W community, that's basically came from, so originally it was set up by myself, a guy called Stefan Digmonze. He helped me from very, very early on, and recently we had Patrick Kohler. He joined us a few months ago. And when we started to branch off into the country-specific UK, so country-specific user groups, it kind of took the pressure off from me, or from us a bit, because it's kind of like we've all got these local communities now. So, well, we're still going to run the WVD community, but obviously we can now also do local meetups as well, which is great. So these are the countries that we have. So we've got ones in the UK, Holland, Germany, Belgium, Danish, Swedish, USA, Australia, New Zealand. So my goal is to have all the countries in the world. So that was going to be 255 countries, but not sure we'll get there, but we'll try. So Kirk, do you want to tell us about a bit what people are going to expect?
Yeah, sure. So the plan is to obviously hold this regularly. So at least once a month on the first Thursday of every month, but although today's a Wednesday. So are we going to do Wednesdays or Thursdays?
This is my bad. So I'm actually booked to go away for a few days, Thursday and Friday. Totally got the timing wrong. So this is a one-off that is on the Thursday, because I know this is the same time as the Northern UK User Group as well, which I know a few people might also want to join. But yeah, this is just a one-off, so it will be the first Thursday of each month going forward.
Yeah, I feel like I'm cheating on the Northern Azure User Group here. So
sorry
okay.
If anyone's listening from the Northern UK User Group.
No problem. So yeah, first Thursday of every month, bar today, obviously. We'll present all the latest Windows Virtual Desktop news, the hot topics, and any sort of inside knowledge that we can gain. So a lot of really cool knowledge in the community and through the global black belts themselves as well. So it's great to get that firsthand. We will be using Teams, so Teams seems to work pretty well for us, and we wait to see if we ever hit any of the limits and we become that popular that we need to start thinking about what else happens. But for now, Teams is working pretty well, I think. And we will make the recordings and slides available after the event as well, so you can go and grab those nice and easily and refer to those in your own time. If you thought that was really cool, I'd love to show a colleague or just share this with a friend, then all of those will be available. And hopefully, fingers crossed, at some point when we're allowed to see other human beings again, then we will look at doing some physical events and all the goodness that happens with that as well. I think we look to record those as well, get those out, maybe stream them, something like that. So I think this part works really well for anyone that's outside of that area, because I'm based up in the northwest, same as you, Neil, right? So For anyone that's not based over there, obviously it might be a bit of a long haul. So we'll look at a way of making that accessible for everyone that wants to get this information.
Good. Okay, so next slide. Yeah, so this is a community event. We are here to listen to you. It's not just us talking at you. So if you want to present, if you've got an idea or anything you want, just tell us. We're very, very open to stuff. So yeah, if there's something you want to see, if there's something you want to do, if there's something we want us to tell you, just tell us and we'll make it happen. So yeah, our Slack channel. So for me, the Slack channel has been one of the most popular things that we've set up. So we're potentially going to be setting up sub channels within the Slack channel for all the different worldwide user groups, but that's a possibility. So yeah, that's the invite. So if you want to join that, feel free to. Some really good conversations going on in there that are very specific to WVD. And as mentioned earlier, we've got people in there from Microsoft who can take product ideas that you've got back there. So it's worth joining. Okay. So our contact details. So yeah, we've got these early on anyway. Just need to sum her up. So this is our website that you can join. Obviously, you will know that because you won't be here otherwise. We've got a Twitter account which I need to post a bit more on when I get time. So my details there, and also Kirk's, which I need to update with also his Twitter. Or got his website and email address in there as well. But that's in his early slide anyway. Quiz. Ignore that. We don't have time to do anything with that. that was dates that we've had. Okay, so I'm just gonna flip that round. You see that?
Yep.
Yep. All good. Okay. So, yeah. So obviously, the spring update got released a few days ago. Well, last week. So I thought I'd do a presentation on that and what it gives us and a bit of the history of the spring update. So spring update is what Microsoft have been working on for a while now. Obviously, the version 1 of WVD, as most of us know, is known as the 4 release. So the 4 release is what a lot of people would have started on. It was a bit clunky to use. It worked, but it was a bit difficult to get set up. The spring update aims to fix all that and bring another few features. So we've got Azure portal integration. We've got better user management. We've got better monitoring features. And one of the most important features that a lot of people were waiting for is the AV redirect from Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to give a bit of a demo. In there, we've got a special guest, Stefan, who's going to be demoing that for us on a pre-recorded video. So where were we a few months ago? So I was still working on the deployments a few months ago, and a lot of users were frustrated because obviously they were unable to use Teams on WVD. Well, you could, but the performance wasn't great. Yeah, a lot of the CPU and audio and video issues and stuff. So it was not a good experience that people would expect. We had to do everything via PowerShell, which for some people is a good thing, for other people it's a bad thing. For me, it's a bit of both because it kind of forced people to use PowerShell, but a lot of people struggled with it, especially if they'd just been used to clicking games and stuff. So, and also there was no auto scaling. So there were solutions out there to do the auto scaling, but nothing was kind of built in and proven and working. Monitoring as well, the monitoring was lacking, but again, it's in this spring update. Another big thing as well is the ARM based. So WVD Spring Update, or as now call it Windows Virtual Desktop, is ARM based. So it's the Azure Resource Manager model, which basically means that it fits nicely into Azure portal. Essentially, it sort of interacts with all the Azure services, and it's essentially an Azure PaaS service. It's no longer anything separate, so you can help all the log analytics, and you can manage it with the built-in Azure commandlets and stuff. So it's very good. So in regards to app publishing, we can now publish applications via AD User Group. We can now use custom RBAC roles. We've got integrated PowerShell, as was mentioned, integrated in Azure Portal. We've got better metadata storage. That's still only in the US at the moment, but I understand that that's going worldwide soon, hopefully. And that's just a quick slide showing the differences between the non-ARM object model and the ARM object model, if anyone's interested in that. So the biggest thing about the Spring update, which most users will like, is the portal. So the Azure portal WVD is now fully integrated in the Azure portal. You can go in there, you can pretty much do most things. Obviously, there will be some things which you can only do by PowerShell, as is the case with most Microsoft products. But when a account uses your portal to basically go in there, create our host pools, assign applications to users, assign desktops to users, lots of stuff, and it's constantly improving as well. So anyone can go and look at that. It's available to anyone with an Azure subscription, so you can go in and have a play about. The other thing is user management. So another big one was in the fall update, you could not assign a application or a desktop pool to a AD group. Now you can, which makes things a whole lot simpler. I recently did a deployment where we using the Spring and we just assign it to an AD group. So when the user comes on board to the company, just add the user to the AD group and bam, bam. You've got access to all the applications, the FS Logics profile, all that stuff. So it makes things a lot easier to manage, as people would have been used to doing that the way Citrix, for example, as an onboarding process. So that's a good job. Monitoring, so we can now monitor our stuff. So we can feed our data straight into Log Analytics, and then based from Log Analytics, we can make our own custom dashboards and how we want them. So Microsoft have made some really good default dashboards available, so you can check those out. And there's also, I noticed a new, I think it was a GitHub repository that popped up, where they're asking community people basically submit their own dashboards. So you can show custom info as long as the information is in Log Analytics. It can be made in a custom dashboard for your company, so you can basically configure it exactly how you want it to show what you want to show, which is good. So Teams AVD redirection. So as I mentioned earlier, this is for me massive. It unlocks a whole lot of people problems. So this is a screenshot that I did when Teams WVD was first done. And what we're basically seeing here is the WVD resources on the actual VM itself. Teams is only using 1% CPU. And it's only using 450 mega memory. But if you look at my local resources, they're the resources on my actual desktop itself. So as you see, Teams there, well, remote desktop, which means Teams is using 38% of the CPU and 4.2 megabits per second of bandwidth. So what that essentially means is we're offloading everything. So that would have been on the actual VM host itself. So that's how much resources you're saving. And from that, we have, So on this, what we've got here, this is how it works. So it uses something called WebRTC, which is basically peer-to-peer connection. So rather than all your bandwidth and stuff going through the WVD infrastructure, it's actually going locally. So that's how that is working. So I have a little video here that I prepared earlier just to show, because I know a few people struggle to get this working and stuff. So I just want to show you what it looks like when it is working. So I will play that now for you. Hang on. There you go. Yep. So I'm here with Stefan. Hello, Stefan. I basically wanted to show the Teams redirection in WVD running. So as you can see, I'm here inside my WVD desktop. I've got a Teams call with Stefan. That's just Stefan. As you can see, we have the Teams version 1.3004461. And the important thing to note here is have the WVD media optimized ticked. So you need to have this, otherwise it won't work very well. So as you can see inside my desktop, Teams is only using at the moment 3% CPU. Hopefully you can hear the audio
if
commentary.
you did this test without
the optimization, I can guarantee you your teams will be running a lot higher. As you can also see, so just to prove that this is Windows team window, so I can't drag this out. So this is running inside my Windows Virtual Desktop. And also, as you can see on the bottom screen, this is my local host and my GPU is using the stuff. So that'll be the teams. I'm sure if we can see that. So let's look at that. Where is it? So we can see the GPU activity, GPU engine. So the top one for GPU engine is remote desktop. So as you can see, we've got remote desktop protocol locally on the host. It's using 1.8 megabits a second, and it's using 4.7% of the GPU. And that process is also using 5% of my local CPU. So if we didn't have this process in place, then all those resources would be hosted on the actual WVD desktop. So we are essentially offloading all the GPU network and. Okay, so yeah, that's that demo. So hopefully, I'm not sure if you heard the comments or not, but if you didn't, I was basically just explaining that you should see the WVD optimized type when WVD is working, and that we are seeing all the bandwidth go locally through my local device. So very, very good feature. So very happy that that's working. Also, we've got the Spring updates. So we've got the PowerShell command that's in there. So you can now, they're the native AZ PowerShell commandlet, so they're included in there. So there used to be a separate PowerShell commandlet package, but now it's all integrated, so that's good. So a lot of people ask, how can I convert? So Microsoft will be releasing some method, but for now you can use the WVD admin tool by Marcel Mura to do that, so you can convert your existing pools automatically. So that's good. And also in other news, we have an updated WVD client that got released a few days ago. So in there, you've got a bit more information. So in there, you've got your client versions, your round trip time, available bandwidth, server details and stuff. So a lot better tools for troubleshooting. So that's worth updating. I think they automatically update anyway. And then we also have our virtual desktop optimization tool, which has been released as well. I know a lot of people use Citrix Optimizer. So Citrix Optimizer is commonly used, but I think going forward, it may be better if we start using this, especially when you do scripted installs and stuff. So it'd be better for that. Some login VSI stats there for you before and after. So if you don't optimize your image today, I think you should definitely take a look at this. Auto scaling script. So these got released last week for this spring update. So obviously you gain most benefit from WVD when you're using auto scaling, which automatically switches your VMs off and on based on either demands that you put on the demand of the actual VMs themselves, or you can configure certain times when the VMs are going to be shut down and started up. So if you're not using auto scaling, definitely take a look at this. And also, you should have a look at WVD Logics. He's created a application which basically installs, which does everything by the GUI for auto scaling. So if you're not too comfortable with doing the PowerShell stuff and you want something to do it all for you, then go and have a look at that website, WVDlogics.net. It's a colleague of ours, Patrick, so he's done a really great job there. So if you want to do auto scaling, go and take a look at that. And that's it from me. I hope that was okay.
It was, yeah.
Good. Did you hear everything?
We did, even the video.
Even the video. Did you hear the video?
Yes, yeah.
Ah, good. I wasn't too sure whether it's come off or not. So good. So I think you're up next, Kirk.
Here we go. All right, let's swap something. So what I'd like to show to you is, hopefully that's going through. Can you see that, Neil?
Yeah,
everyone?
I can see it.
Brilliant. Is a little service that comes along from an acquisition that the company I work for, NetApp, acquired. So you might know it by its former name, as it was called CloudJumper. So the company I work for basically acquired them, and it's now imaginatively called Virtual Desktop Service. So you can see marketing obviously got their money's worth there. And what this allows you to do is to pretty much deal with everything after the provision, in fact. So it does the provisioning very fast. We've done bake-offs and things like that, and it's pretty smart at it. But what is unique about it is it integrates with Microsoft's shared file technology, which is called ANF. And what that allows you to do with using ANF is benefit from sub-millisecond, highly responsive a data platform that's native from Microsoft. It's not from NetApp, it's not from anyone else. It's from Microsoft that allows your FXLogix profiles to really benefit from that responsiveness and the scale, concurrency, and everything else that goes along with it. So this VDS service, I just want to run you through what this does. Is basically allowing you to do all of the post management, because just because you put your desktops in the cloud, I'm sure you're very well aware, it doesn't get rid of all the admin headaches of management, image management, making sure everything's secure, patching, updating, all that usual stuff that happens. So with that in mind, the VDS service, so formerly Cloud Jumper, hopefully you're all seeing it okay. I'll make it a little bit bigger just for everyone else's screens. You can see everything focuses, just like in WVD, around pretty much, the workspace. So workspace here could be one implementation of virtual desktop. That could be Windows Virtual Desktop. It could be RDS. So it's great if you're hybrid as well. And basically that controls everything around it. That's your VMs and your policy and sort of thing there. So if I go into a workspace, let's go into, I don't know, let's try this one. This one looks exciting. Okay, and I can see how many active users, what the consumption is, and everything else, and some other overarching things of where it is, what's the data usage, what servers and things do I have available. I'm really interested in the WVD piece. So WVD here, you can see it's giving me the details of what is the URL that I would normally use for my client to go and access this? What are the activities around here? What about the preview and the workspaces here? And again, everything WVD really focuses around that sort of host pool. So when we look at the VDS piece here, you can see that you've got the host pools, the workspaces, and everything else. So if we look at a host pool, if I wanted to add a host pool, then you can see straight away I've got my sites. So with the sites, what this does, which is really nice, is it automatically provisions and sets up all of your VNets, the ARM workspace, everything. So you can start from scratch, and it will deploy all the elements it needs, the architecture, within this workflow. So you're not having to set up your VNets beforehand or any of that. It can do and manage all of that for you, which is great because we have a lot of service providers that use this technology, and it allows them to fully automate end-to-end creation of these environments. So I can pick these regions over here, and let's just say I'll go for South Central US over here. Pick my workspace, so I've got preview, and then I can start going through. Okay, I need to create a host pool, so it could be Kirk's host pool. I'll give it a friendly name, give it a type. And it's got support for obviously pooled personal, which are pretty much standard stuff in WVD. And that's the really cool thing about this is it's not a different way of managing. It's not like a proprietary management control plane. This is 100% native Azure API. So what that allows it to do is obviously very quickly follow and expose all the value of WVD and all those millions of dollars of investment that Microsoft putting into it back out to yourself. So the pooled and personal are the ones that you can go and pick there. Okay, so that's going to set up your network, your storage. It also does all your policies as well for FSLogix and deploys FSLogix as well, which is really good. And then you've got, if I do pick pooled, so let's go back to pooled, then even around, the load balancer type there. So obviously, you're going to go for depth first because you're paying for those resources. In Azure, it's a different cost model to on-prem where you might want to do anything else. With Azure, you're obviously wanting to track and get maximum amount of utilization so that you're utilizing the resources you're paying for. So you'd go for depth first. Full support for the OS disk types as well. So you've got ephemeral or persistent as well. So depending on how you do the deployment of your boxes, if they need that persistency or ephemeral storage, and then your templates as well. So you can see you've got your support for all your templates here. If you do anything with a -EBD, these are all the native Microsoft templates as well. So they're all automatically populated. So, if I want to take a box with Office 365 on already, then I can pick these templates from the store or these Windows 10 ones here. So all your templates, very easy to deploy. Then I select the number of instances that I want to go and deploy. So let's just go pick one of these, .uvd. Pick the size. So again, full selection, everything that's your subscription is entitled to. And then off the back of that, so let's just pick one of those, your storage type. So whatever those VMs actually go and support and instances. So nothing too different to the way you would do things there. And of course, this was here as well before, obviously, the great work that Microsoft have done building the GUI, which has made it a lot easier. So off that as well, what you can do is off your templates, you can build a custom image, install the apps, everything else that you need. The custom image management is pretty cool. We don't usually demo it. I wouldn't have time today. But you can basically do everything you need there, and VDS does all the sysprep, turning it back into an image ready for Azure consumption for you. So you can have all your image management really streamlined with this service as well. And right now, so the latest tests that we did in terms of being able to deploy, from an instance perspective, we can deploy about 100 instances in about 37 minutes. And that's because we use parallel builds that go on. And then we actually hit the throttle limit of API anyway, because there's a API throttling that happens, which currently on the last testing we did, we test it week by week. The most simultaneous API operations we were able to hit was between 420 and 475 before you hit those throttles on the gateway. Okay. So once we're on the host pool, you'll see again, we can look at these host pools. Let's go over here. You'll start to see again what's part of that. So you can see what the load balancer was, where the session hosts are, the app groups themselves as well. And an app group, if you, I assume everyone probably knows, but if you don't, an app group defines what you're entitled to as a user. So that could be, off your feeds, which desktop you're entitled to, which applications you're entitled to. So when you log into your feed as your user, you have your entitlement of these are the things that are available to you. So they are the app groups that are available in here as well. Okay, so your session hosts, again, very important. If you've got your pools, you may want to add more session hosts on the fly. So we can just click add. And again, you template, you pick the size, how many of them, and that's it. It will add those session hosts into that pool for you automatically as well. And also what I like about this is swapping your hosts. So if, for example, you get to a point where you say, okay, let's update this one. Yeah. So here, edit session host. If I provisioned a new host with a new image and the new versions of everything that are ready to consume, and I now want to sort of non-disruptively start moving people to that session host, so I can start basically moving the users. The next time they log in, they're going to log into the new host. I'd have a second host here. And what I would do is on the existing host, I can untick this and say, right, no more sessions. As the load balancer that's provided through Windows Virtual Desktop, stop pointing any sessions towards this host. I would like them to go to my new host that I've just provisioned with all the latest images and everything on instead. So that you've got a really nice fallback for if you do find a problem with your image or something's not perhaps going as planned, then you could actually revert quite quickly by unticking your host. And, it's a concept that we've seen day in, day out with Kubernetes, where you change your tagging and all your traffic goes somewhere else, and you can do A/B testing very quickly. So we bring that to Windows Virtual Desktop very simply through these features here as well. Then I suppose what we've got to do is obviously you've got on that host pool, As well, you can see, for example, how many active users. So obviously it's not a very exciting demo environment. There's nobody doing anything. So it's just sat there doing it. But if there was, you'd see the information of those active users on the pool, and you can start to do some metrics as well at that level, which is very interesting. And then from the deployment perspective, so if you're thinking, oh, how does this deploy? Well, it's just as your best practice. It's an enterprise application. It's got a service principal, and it will do all of your sort of once you've set up that account, it does things like having your FS Logics configuration, and all of your security context is also set up out of the box as well. From a workspace perspective as well, so if we go back to workspace, and we'll go back to this one, then there's also this concept of workload scheduling. So you can do live scaling. So this is event driven. So what this allows you to do is, rather than polling, and there's some great scripts and everything around as well, what this does is it's polling the live APIs, and from that it can see your resource utilization from the session host level, and if required, it can scale automatically. So there's three concepts that it can scale from. It can do, okay, do you want additional powered on servers enabled as well? So for example, great for the mornings when you've got things like login storms or it's your busiest time, then you might want to be able to scale very quickly. And then when your users are logging out, you want to start switching those resources off to save, obviously, because you want to track your utilization curve. Then you've got your shared users. So you may have a rule where you say, actually, per user, per server, our testing has shown that we can do 12 or 20 users. Depending, if you're in finance, for example, you'll see that you always get less users per server, because obviously you've got all your security and everything else that's running, that's driving the amount of IO and everything, and resource consumption up. So you'll probably have a good idea of what your ratio of users per server is for your build, so you can match that rule quite quickly as well. And then also you can set a threshold of, well, this is the maximum before you actually go and create another server. So you've got three different things you can do with live scaling. You also have a workload schedule. So this schedule allows you to actually say between certain days or things like that, you might know that between 7 and 11 is going to be busy or whatever it is, and you can run those workload schedules at that particular time. So you've got live scaling, and you've also got scheduled scaling built in there as well. So of course, it's not reinventing the wheel. The GVB team, so Tom and those guys, Christian, and Jim. I think Jim put the script out. You can do that. You can do a logic app on a schedule, and we just saw was it called WVD Logics? We just saw that as well. So there's lots of different ways you can do it. That's inbuilt here, and it is event driven as well. So you set your thresholds, and it will go off those events. So very responsive, no lag time to respond. Those extra powered on as well, they're really good for your login storms as well. So if you need to change that, you can change those on the fly as well. And then finally, probably one of the most powerful features of here is the scripted events. So because on this, an agent is installed automatically through the service onto those hosts, you can run those native commands like PowerShell or Chocolatey or any of those sort of things. So, for example, I've got a script repository, and if I wanted to upload a script, I would just select a file, upload that script, and it goes into the script repository. And then at that point, what I like is that I then pick an activity or an event to then tie that script to. So if you're ever thinking about, well, wouldn't it be great if I could do this really easily if, for example, a certain event has happened, then you can start to see here, there's the installs. So let's just say, let's get it install Chrome to this deployment over here and enable that. So here we go. Manage. And you can see the triggers. So you can tie all of these to things like well, this is going to be an application install. So once I request that install, this is what's going to run. But look at the other things you've got here. So if you're creating clients, if you're creating users, perhaps there's triggers you want to do. If you're deleting users, maybe there's some cleanup you want to do on those systems. So you can put these to the life cycle events of what happens on WVD and do some very flexible scripting and event management through these scripted events. So pretty powerful stuff. For example, we have one where storage is pretty boring. And traditionally, what people do when they look at storage is they look at what their peak requirement is. They provision enough disks to cope with that peak requirement, plus or minus 10, 15, well, plus about 10% to give you a bit of headroom. And then you don't really revisit it until you either hit a problem or an alert's going off somewhere. Now, Microsoft have built what's called volume shaping into ANF. What that allows you to do is actually say, well, when we've got a login storm, why don't we scale the performance of the volume for the FSLogix profiles accordingly? So we match the utilization curves. So instead of provisioning for your peak and leaving it there 24 hours a day, if you look at your utilization curve, there's probably 12 hours of the day, 8 hours of the day where you don't need that amount of storage at all. And the only reason we've never talked about, oh yeah, you just scale down and replace the storage and everything else, is because it's traditionally been very difficult to do. Because when you then need the storage, how fast is it available? How fast does the systems respond? So with the ANF piece from Microsoft, you can scale up, scale down. And what's really cool, a new feature that's it should be in the portal now actually, is that for large scale migrations, you can actually set your tier as ultra in ANF. Bring in your migration, really accelerate it, and then switch it to premium in seconds. So there's no data migration between the tiers, lots of stuff. And what we've done is actually said, okay, well, now we understand that, we can put the scripted events around it, which you'll see in the next version, which releases very soon, that basically allows auto management of the storage as well. So you'll see it tracking the amount you've provisioned performance-wise and everything, tracking your utilization curve. Which obviously gives you a massive benefit of cost savings. For one customer, we just finished the cost modeling for them, and it's a 70% reduction on their storage costs whilst improving the responsiveness of their entire FSLogix profiles. So certainly something that's never been widely understood. We're right on the wave of bringing this. In Azure, you can do this now. You can't really easily go and do this in other cloud providers just yet. So certainly a great place to go and see that, and obviously WVD and it is at home in Azure anyway. So great thing to sort of an example of how you can use these triggered events to do a lot more than just installing and running certain things, but you can actually interact with the infrastructure underneath and be able to do that as well. So that is pretty much the demo. It's pretty simple. There's lots of other things you can see in there. I wouldn't have enough time today. But yeah, it's relatively simple use, and basically is really targeted at, it can get you up and running, but Microsoft's done a great job of fixing that gap. Less PowerShell to go and do that. But also it's everything after that point. So, provisioning is a one-time event. The management is always ongoing. So simplifying the management of that and just ensuring that you have the information you need, the dashboards that you need, and then all the responsiveness and actions that you can tie around that as well. So that's that. I haven't been looking at the chat, so I haven't seen any questions yet. So I'll just flick over to the chat and see if there's any questions.
No questions.
Cool. What's the cost? What's the cost? I'm not commercial. I'm a technical person. So yeah, it's basically going to be the cost for that. I believe there's some bundles going on right now where if you actually use an ANF for your FSLogix profiles, there's some entitlement that goes on there. I don't know what it is. Last time I saw it was up to your first 50 users were free if you were using ANF. And then there was some preferential pricing, but I think it's all going to be announced over the coming weeks as to what the new bundle looks like.
Good. Any other questions from anyone? Nope. Okay, so Shabaz, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, good. Do you want to? Oh, hang on, some more questions. There's another question that just came in, Kirk. I did notice a spot for domain joining during the demo. Is it possible?
Domain joining what, the VDS or the storage? The storage can. So your storage can support both Azure AD and AD for the VM piece. Oh yeah, so joining the domain. Yeah, yes, joining domains. Let me find out the exact thing. Does VDS do this? And yeah, I'll get you an answer in the next few seconds. So reason for that is obviously I'm with Mike Walsh, who's the director of that product. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll see if the session host does VDS do it, and I'll have an answer for you on the chat.
Cool. So Shabaz, you good to go?
Yep, thank you very much. I'll just share my screen.
Okay. So Shabaz's got a wonderful story for us.
So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Windows Virtual Desktop UK User Group, the first one, as Neil said. Just give you a quick introduction about myself. That's me. That was me at Microsoft Ignite. I was lucky enough to go last year. So my name is Shabaz Darr. I'm a senior professional service consultant for a medium-sized MSP called Concord Technology Group. We're based up north in Wakefield. My focus is mainly on cloud, mainly Azure, and I do some security as well. My Twitter handle is @ShabazDarr. If you want to follow me, I try and stay as active as I can. And I also have a blog, which is I Am IT Geek. Again, I've not blogged in a while, a few months, but I do try and update my blog every now and then with kind of projects that I'm working on. So as Neil might have touched on, my presentation, it's not a technical overview of Windows Virtual Desktop, or particularly this project that I worked on, but it's a look at a use case that I felt was very, very relevant, especially at the moment, and it helps us to see how Windows Virtual Desktop helps a key service of the UK, which has been the NHS, in their fight against the pandemic that we find ourselves at the moment. So just a quick introduction on some of the items that I'll be discussing. So the requirement / problem that this NHS based down south and NHS Trust and what their problem was and their requirement. Why Windows Virtual Desktop? Why did they end up choosing that in the end? And how did that come about? I'll go into some detail around some of the challenges that we had with Windows Virtual Desktop. You know, I'm sure we've all done many different projects in our own time, and we all know there's always challenges. You never have the perfect project where things all go smooth. So just wanted to go into some detail around that, and you know the sort of areas that I'm talking about, like security challenges, imaging challenges, and integration with their on-premises infrastructure, challenges around that. Finally, I'll just a bit of a summary and kind of conclusion really as to where they are now and how are they finding now that it's nearly 3 months since it was implemented. How is that NHS Trust working with it, and you know, is it benefiting them? So just a quick, I do like my memes, I'll warn you now, so I've got a couple of random memes that are just in there because I found them funny, really, including this one. So just to set the scene, this was right at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, so we're talking late March, early April, and lockdown was obviously looming for the entire UK. I was brought into this project once all the scoping and sizing was already completed, so that it was basically they were a third party, and they brought me in to do just solely the implementation. So a lot of the kind of the horse had already bolted before I got involved, so there were a lot of things I obviously couldn't control or have a say in. So as I mentioned, the lockdown was looming, and the NHS had the trust had some requirements. One of them was where they basically had around 200 plus users and staff that they essentially needed to work from home. They were looking at either a remote service like Windows Virtual Desktop, or issuing staff with laptops, which would mean many man hours building devices with no real way of managing those devices once they're issued. They're obviously under very tight timescales, extreme pressure and time constraints to get a solution in place. And again, all down to the fact that the pandemic was just starting and lockdown was looming. So it obviously caused a lot of time constraints and something, whatever decision was made, they had to get it in place in a short space of time. They needed a very robust solution that could easily scale as more staff started working from home. The initial requirement was for 200 users concurrent. However, with there being no timescales really for the COVID-19 ending, and obviously we still don't really know what's going to happen with it, they needed a solution which could scale up as the numbers of users increase. So obviously 200 was the start of it. The more benefits it brought and the more successful it was, they were going to obviously add more users to it down the line, which is actually how it's turned out, as I'll explain later. Very important, obviously, they needed a secure solution. They needed a solution that would allow staff to potentially use their own personal devices, because not everyone obviously had a works device, which was one of the problems at the time. But with that came another challenge, which was allowing NHS to protect their data and their environment. As I mentioned, most users didn't have NHS provided devices, so they were adding this is like an added problem to the solution which it needed to solve. Finally, whatever they chose, whatever solution they went with, it needed to have be able to integrate with their on-premises solution. 95% of their infrastructure was hosted on premises, all the physical servers, virtual servers, on-premises storage, data, applications for this particular trust. All the applications used by the NHS staff for this trust were hosted on premises. And they also had a requirement where they wanted the Windows Virtual Desktop session hosts to integrate with group policy. And they want to control the user desktop experience, including mapping drives and locking down desktops. So that was another problem and requirement that they needed solving. So why did they go in? Why did they go with Windows Virtual Desktop in the end? Like I said, the horse had kind of bolted before I'd got involved, so I was just implementing it. But obviously, I had a lot of discussions with the existing IT staff at the trust, so they kind of explained around why they made their decision. One of them was that obviously Windows Virtual Desktop can be accessed from anywhere, and all the users it had lived at different locations around the area. So the trust had decided that Windows Virtual Desktop was the right solution, and despite the current looming kind of pandemic, they made a decision to go with it because they felt like it kind of ticked all the boxes, and this was one of the main ones, being able to access it anywhere. Also, again, it meant that they wouldn't have to use like a VPN solution or anything to get to their data and their applications. It can be implemented in a short space of time. Again, I mentioned the time constraints. I think Neil, you might have said that literally now you can deploy it in like 2 clicks, two to 3 clicks, which is is amazing. At the time of the project, I believe Windows Virtual Desktop was probably not the spring release, but is it whatever release was in April? So it was only deployable via PowerShell and the marketplace. So like it is, it's not like today. It's obviously you can do it through the Azure portal, so it's a lot quicker. But it was still, even though it was through PowerShell, it was still a lot quicker than deploying laptops to users. Windows Virtual Desktop, it was robust. It was more robust than any other kind of solution they could look at. It's highly available, and most importantly, you're able to scale up and down with ease and speed. So you can add in hosts, which since then, as I'll mention later on, that they have done, because the requirements increase and they've got more users on it. The added benefit of being able to secure the solution with multi-factor authentication was, and conditional access was a massive tick for the Windows Virtual Desktop. Again, it just added that extra layer of security that they were kind of looking for. As I mentioned, they wanted it to be a secure solution, and through MFA and the conditional access, they had a lot more control over that, especially with potentially people using and connecting to Windows Virtual Desktop from their own devices, personal devices. So again, this is not quite a specific feature for Windows Virtual Desktop, but with it being hosted in Azure and 95% of the remaining infrastructure being on premises, it was essential that some sort of extended network capability was available, and using the Azure native VPN gateway was the service they were going to use. So again, it ticked the box where they said they wanted to have on-premises integration. I think that the question just before I started around domain joining, these VMs are all domain joined and integrated with group policy. So just want to touch on some of the implementation challenges that I kind of had, and again, just to say that I was very new to Windows Virtual Desktop at this point. It was only my second deployment, and that my first deployment was a lot on a smaller scale and wasn't as complicated, and it wasn't as tight at timescales as this. So yeah, as I mentioned, I was brought into the project specifically for the implementation. The first real major hurdle was the Windows 10 image, and again, I think Neil, the chat you guys were having before we started the presentations was around imaging and on all that side of it. They didn't want to use the Windows 10 image available in the marketplace. This particular NHS trust had their own golden image of Windows 10, which they wanted the session host to have. And with this was this is my first implementation where a customer was building a specific image rather than using the Azure Marketplace one. Unfortunately, I ended up making quite a grave error. Initially, they ended up using a standard Windows 10 Pro OS for their image, and we realized in the test phase that this wouldn't allow multi-session connections. A very harsh lesson, but a lesson learned nonetheless, and I won't be making I won't be making that mistake again. But like I said, the point is that we learned from it. We then followed the correct process by creating the VM in Azure, importing that into Hyper-V, and using this as the base for the image. So the VM that I created in Azure was using the right OS, which I think is the multi-session version of Windows 10. We then uploaded this once the image was completed. It had all the apps and all the kind of settings in place. We uploaded that back into Azure, and I did an image capture of that, and that's what we kind of used for our base image for the session host. So as I mentioned before, MFA with conditional access added an extra layer of security. Now, the implementation of this wasn't challenging from a technical perspective, but this particular trust, they were already using Office 365 for Exchange, but they'd not implemented MFA as part of that. So it was going to be a new feature for their users. They'd never used multi-factor authentication, so it was all going to be new for them. During the testing process, it appeared to be a simple enough process to get your MFA set up. But when we started doing the user testing, we found that users weren't following the instructions carefully enough. Things like people who were getting the personal devices were being added into the MDM Intune platform. They were getting enrolled. Instead of using the specific app, users were kind of enrolling their devices, so they had a load of non-corporate devices essentially in their Intune. Users weren't following the instructions, and they were messing up the way the MFA was set up, and we're having to reset people's MFA settings and do them again. you can't control how the users follow documentation, but it meant we had to go into much more granular detail with the user guides and the documentation to try and mitigate that. And the on-premises integration was another massive challenge. Not from the aspect of setting up the site-to-site VPN. As I mentioned earlier, that we use the Azure virtual gateway to connect to on-premises network. Complication was getting the VMs to be manageable by their Active Directory and group policy. So domain joining them to their on-premises AD rather than the Azure AD domain services. So we initially, again, when I first created the kind of deployment, they were registering with the Azure Domain Services service, and they were finding that obviously they weren't registering to the on-premises AD. And in the end, what I had to do was, again, don't know if I was going to call this a botched job, but in the end, I had to change the VNet DNS settings to point to the on-premises DNS servers. And then once I rejoined the session host to the domain, that's when we could see them in Active Directory, put them in the relevant OU, and the group policies applied. So that's kind of how we got around that challenge. And again, they're able to manage the session host. Now, I mean, there's about 15 session hosts are able to manage those through group policy. So again, it's a very short presentation, but just to go on to, where are they now? I wanted to finish off my presentation with a little bit on this, because it's been 3 months since implementation was completed. I just wanted to discuss how the NHS trusts are adapting to this new way of working for them and the benefits it's brought them. So, like I said, 3 months on, they have over 200 staff working from home and have already added another 2 hosts into the pool. This shows that the Windows Virtual Desktop deployment has solved the problems they had getting users working remotely as quick as they could without having to issue new laptops to so many staff. So working from home is now the norm for them, and it's something they've not had before. MFA is still causing a nightmare. So unfortunately, it's still, no matter how granular I go with the documentation, people are still doing the same issues. This has obviously been a massive learning curve for the users, but it's not something you can work around. MFA is a necessity, and we continue to try and educate the users the best we can, be it through training sessions, or actually holding their hand and going through the MFA process configuration with them. To conclude, and to put it simply, Windows Virtual Desktop has saved lives. By allowing this NHS trust to send users home and continue to do their jobs in an efficient way, it's helped lower the risk of people getting infected, and those people in turn have been able to play a vital role in the fight against COVID-19. So thank you very much. I hope that was interesting. It was a very short presentation, but I just felt it was a very relevant topic at the moment, with us all kind of being in the position where they're in, i.e. lockdown. So I'll unshare my screen, and thank you for listening, and I'll go to the questions, I suppose.
Yep, thanks so much for that, Shabaz. That was a great presentation.
Thank you. Try to see which questions are relevant to me. Ballpark on costs. Again, unfortunately, they're not directly one of my company's customers. We were brought in by a third party to do, because they didn't have the skills in house. We were brought in by them to do the work. So unfortunately, I don't know much about the costs. I think that's David Overton who had that. But just to see, I think they're using the one thing I actually forgot to mention. This should have been quite relevant as well. At the time I was deploying this, Azure had the massive issues with resource availability. So the actual size that they wanted to deploy, we couldn't deploy. And we ended up getting, with this project, there was the Microsoft Fast Track team were involved, and we ended up getting them to escalate the kind of resource requirement for us. And apparently at the time it was taking almost 2 weeks to kind of get resources. and because of the requirement and with it being NHS and the fight against COVID and all that sort of stuff, I think 2 to 3 days we ended up having the resources available that we needed. But that should have really been in my challenges. That was a massive challenge as well. Everyone seemed to be doing resources at the time in Azure, so there was a massive backlog of I think it was UK South and UK West and Europe all kind of running out of resources. I'm sure you all remember it was quite a lot of information around it in the news and social media. Did you find the need to deploy any third-party solutions? No, sorry, that's the Mike Foster's question. I didn't know. We used use the standard stuff like the FS Logics with the Azure files for the profiles, which worked relatively well. But there were no other third-party tools or solutions that we had to use. No. Tom's question, I don't know if I could answer that. David, I can find that information out for you. I think they use the in the end we had to use it because they wanted to use the D size. Can't remember exactly what. I do have it documented somewhere, David.
The standard ones, and most people use default S.
Originally that's what they wanted. Yeah, but I think we had to go with F, one of the F-type ones. I can't remember again because it was the closest match.
Okay, so F-type series are more CPU intensive. So if you've got any applications which require lots of CPU, people normally pick F series. But for general use, D series are normally quite good. But I think the average cost for a D series, which can host, it depends on your application and users, but for around £500 a month per host on average.
Sorry, I think there's some more questions further up. Any recommendations for the hardware token to use for MFA, as we may not be able to use phones to authenticate? I didn't use the hardware token, but I think there's a few vendors that do the hardware token. I don't know off the top of my head actually. Do you know it all, Neil?
No, I've never actually used hardware tokens on any deployments. Most deployments I use the sort of soft tokens, but I know the YubiKeys are quite popular. But I'm not sure. Someone else probably be better advised.
Imagine costs. Are you using this to save costs? Training solution process. So Vinay, to answer your question around the elasticity, again, it's at the moment it's manually adding hosts as and when they need. They've not got any kind of auto scaling or anything like that in place. Monitoring solution they're using again as part of it's a very strange setup. Even though they're not our customer, we're still doing the support for it. Again, I believe because the third party who brought us in don't have the kind of resources or skills in house. So we're actually using SolarWinds to do the monitoring. Really, we should use Azure Monitor, I suppose, but again, that was a commercial decision, unfortunately, not mine. But yeah, we're using SolarWinds, which is kind of I think what my company used to do their monitoring. Have you made changes? No, Vinay, no, not made any changes to any BYOD policies. Again, it's like a strange kind of setup. We only support the Windows Virtual Desktop kind of environment. I don't believe they're really using Intune properly. They're not enrolling devices or using the MDM platform. I don't believe so. There's no kind of policies that have been set up yet. Brian, say the user density numbers. How many users does this So again, I'm not sure of the exact density numbers. I think when I was doing the sizing was unfortunately done before I got involved, but I think through the at the time through the marketplace when you're going through the configuration, it actually does the sizing for you. If you put in the number of users, concurrent concurrent users and the size VM you want to use, it actually tells you how many hosts you need. That was in that.
I've got a bit of advice. Ignore that.
Okay.
No, seriously. So it depends on your configuration. So you don't know what's going on that host, right? So the way that tool works is it looks at the number of cores in the VM, and that bases that on the number of users to a ratio. I think it uses 1 to 12 or something like that. But obviously that's dependent on your workload, right? So some users use a full published desktop. Some users will be using Notepad. Some users will be using Edge. Some users will be using 20 instances of Chrome per user. So it wholly depends on what you're doing. I've worked at some customers where, because of the applications that they're using, we can only fit 5 users on one host. But if they go into the tool and it's saying, well, it told me I can fit 12 users onto the host. So don't use that as a you can use it as a generic guideline, but always use your sizing based on what you're actually seeing.
Yeah.
I normally, when I'm doing sizing for a customer, I just deploy one host and I say, right, 10 users, on you go. Let's have a look at it. Let's see what it's doing. Let's see what applications you're running. Let's see what CPU usage is. Let's see what the memory usage is, all that stuff. The only way to do proper sizing is to collect real world information, I've found.
That's really good advice. So into resourcing. There's a question from Brian for Tom.
Yeah, so I just put a response from Mark Rasivinich, who's the CTO for Azure, into the meeting chat. It's just a blog and a video. What I would say is, so I was on the ground when COVID kicked off, and we just could not keep up with the demand. It was, as you would imagine, just unprecedented. And so there were, unfortunately, some decisions that had to be made about who got what, and some, if you weren't essential, essentially, at least to start with, you didn't get any of this new infrastructure, but they were racking and stacking at a rate that was just unheard of prior to this, to the point that in the comments, we put in something like 6 million cores into Azure in the first few weeks of that COVID response. We stood up teams for 1.2 million NHS staff. And those cores just got consumed as soon as they were made available. Mark's video talks about that, so watch that afterwards. But I think what we've seen is that there's lots of customers, particularly sort of frontline workers, that were sort of serviced during this time, and massive lessons have been learned around, like, hopefully this never happens again. But in terms of sort of doing massive deployments as and when, there's been massive lessons that have been learned. So yeah, have a look at that video when you've got some time.
I mean, my own experience during that time was that Microsoft were really responsive from especially with this project, and for the, like you said, for like the really important, like, especially NHS trusts and stuff like that. Like I said, we had a specific fast track team literally on tap, and yep. The response, my own personal experience, response from Microsoft was really good.
Good. Have we got more questions? We seem to get a lot of questions, which is good. Keep the questions coming.
I think Jags has got one about the VDI optimization tools leveraged. Was there a need to fine tune any of the images for type of users? So Jags, with that particular project, again, because of the way the sort of applications that they had, NHS used a lot of strange applications. This trust do. They had a specific way that they created their golden image, and it was all manual scripts and all sorts. And so I kind of stayed away from it. But there was no fine tuning. It was literally just I got them their base image with the correct OS on, so it was multi-session capable, and they just manually had to install the applications because just that's how they do it. They don't have any other way of imaging, unfortunately. So again, it was massively time consuming, but it was just for just what we had to do.
Yeah.
Have you put the solution behind any third-party NVA firewalls? And that's a question from Vinay. Don't don't know if that's aimed at me or not. I personally haven't done. Don't know if you have at all, Neil.
What was the question? Sorry.
Have you put this solution behind any third-party NVA firewalls, so like maybe a WatchGuard or
No.
anything like that?
Nope. No, the only solution we've put it behind is the Azure firewall, because we had an issue where applications came from the same IP address, so we had to deploy an Azure firewall for a customer to make sure the source IP was always the same. But apart from that, no, I've not really done any massively huge deployments which need stuff like browser firewalls, stuff like that yet. So I'm probably not best advised in that scenario. But I mean, what I'm seeing from these chats is a lot of people are very interested in user density, scaling, and image management. Those are the things which have come in spring. I mean, essentially, if you think about user density, surely you want to get to a stage where you don't have to worry about what the size of your VM is. You just need to think about the performance of that host, right? So if we can get it to a state where VMs will automatically provision themselves, shut down, start up based on what that CPU, memory, host is, then that takes away that whole how many users do I need to fit on a host, right? Because you can just, well, let the system work that out for itself. So maybe that's something we need to work towards.
Difficult keeping up with the questions that have been fired in.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of questions.
Which is great because it means people listened, I suppose.
Yeah, so question from David right about cost optimization coming to trust over the coming months to enable scaling. Any plans to do that next? So, I mean, I guess you couldn't do that because I think at the time that you did that, the scaling is quite immature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously now that we've got the spring update, which has got a lot of the auto scaling goodness in it. For example, would you, for example, go back and revisit that trust and say, we've now got this auto scaling, do you want us to go ahead and implement it?
So it kind of leads me on to the question I asked you earlier on Twitter, if you remember, around so again, because this is in an older version of Windows Virtual Desktop, potentially looking to migrate them to the spring release, so that we can actually manage it through the portal, and in turn that'll obviously, I would imagine, bring a lot more features into play.
So you can migrate. There is a third-party tool, the WVD admin tool, which I shared earlier during the presentation. So that tool will migrate all your hosts from the full release over to the new Windows Virtual Desktop service. But I believe also Microsoft are releasing a native tool set to do that as well. So that would be PowerShell scripts, I presume. But what I will say also is if your environment is managed properly and you get your image management right, it may be quicker just to go and create a new set of host pools in the new environment. Because if you've got your existing VNets in place, for just creating a new host pool, it's just a case of going into the portal, creating a new resource group, deploying some VMs from that using your existing image, and you should be good to go. Obviously, you need to assign the users and stuff like that, but it should be, as long as you've got your image, the rest of it should be quite easy in theory. Yeah, I mean, from the chat, as I just said, the biggest pain points seem to be image management. I mean, how did you do your image management? Was it using VHD files, or did you use like the shared image gallery?
So for this particular one, it was a VHD. So I created an Azure VM.
Okay.
But initially, I didn't do that, and I proper screwed up. Luckily, it wasn't in production. It was like in a test phase that we picked up on that. But essentially, I created a VM in Azure with the correct OS for multi-session hosts, and then exported that to a VHD. Downloaded that for the NHS Trust IT team. They imported that, imported it into a Hyper-V host essentially on premises. built their image. Like I said, they had a very long-winded way of doing their images with scripts and these strange applications that they need to work. So once they'd done that, I then uploaded that back into Azure. Again, it kind of uploaded it into a VM, captured that, and then that created the image that was in Azure.
Okay.
And for the Windows Virtual Desktop configuration, I just picked that image, through the when I was configuring it. And yeah, and unfortunately, as far as managing and updating the image with software and stuff like that, applications, just because of the way they do their image, it's unfortunately a manual kind of process, and a lot of the apps they use are very they have strange configuration. I mean, we're doing patch management. That's kind of been done again through the SolarWinds app that Concord use. So all that's kind of been managed, but yeah, unfortunately, this is not a good example of image management. But
yeah, I mean,
it's because of the use case.
Where we're trying to get to with WVD is where the image doesn't matter anymore. Obviously, if you virtualize your FS Logics container, so you've got the profile out the image, once MSX app attach comes into play, we've got the applications away from the image, and then essentially, if you've got your base image completely separated, then those components could be all be managed independently, and deploying a new operating system just is basically swapping out the underlying OS. Personally, I think it's going to take us a lot of time to get there, but we'll see. I have seen quite a lot of solutions popping onto the market which will take a lot of legacy applications and turn them into MSX AppAttach packages. So that will be awesome. I mean, can you imagine a scenario in your scenario where you had all your applications and you managed to get them all into MSX AppAttach? You don't have to do image management anymore, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So that's where we're going to get to, apparently. Question from Neil Burton: anyone doing major graphics virtualization on WVD? So interestingly, I did a demo to a company who specialized in graphics earlier this week, and they were totally blown away because for their customers, they deploy physical. So they run a company basically which hosts GPU-enabled workstations in their data center environment, and then they supply those a kind of desktops as a service. So they've been whacking out $4,000 a time on these NVIDIA GPU cards and putting them into servers and then charging customers for them. And I was like, you do realize that we can just power them on and off if you want, and I can deploy that within 30 minutes within WVD? And the guy says, I don't believe you. So he challenged me to deploy a NVIDIA Tesla card in WVD in 30 minutes and show him how it works. And we did that. And he just turned around to me and says, you just did what would have cost me nearly 10 grand. It's going to cost me £1 a minute, and you've done it in 30 minutes. So I was like, yeah, that's WVD for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's a question from Jags. I'm assuming it's aimed at me. Reflecting back, what would you have changed in the design implementation, if any, or use third-party tools? There were a few things that I did actually challenge. Believe it or not, MFA wasn't part of the original scoping at all for some reason, and it's only kind of when I got a kind of view of the scope that the third party whose customer it was had kind of given the NHS Trust. I kind of challenged it and went, we've got no. Where's the extra layer of security? Yep, we can lock things down with the network security groups, but if we're going to be using it on their own machines or personal machines, we need to control it somehow. So it was me that kind of I did challenge the MFA, and that's how we kind of got that implemented. Yeah, it's had a lot of challenges, especially with users, as I said, but other things as well. I might have, I did mention Intune to them as well about trying to manage with Intune policies and stuff like that. But again, because of the way the IT team were kind of drilled in the training that they'd already had, they weren't equipped to be able to manage that moving forward. So probably not the right time. And over, I think that's about it, really. There wasn't any need for any third-party tools, if I'm honest. Azure had kind of all the capabilities. I would have preferred to use Azure Monitor if possible rather than SolarWinds. But yeah.
Good. Yeah, I mean, as I said, there's a lot of questions about image management, and so for the next one, we've got Jim Moyle coming on, and he's gonna talk all about image management, so you can pester him to death on that. That'll be Thursday, the 3rd of September. So yeah, we're approaching 2 hours. Is there anything else anybody wants to watch? Sorry, ask us, or any questions for anyone who's presented tonight or anyone who's on the call? Because this is what this call is for you to all ask questions and talk about WVD and stuff. Andrew says, why are his VMs going mad but apparently idle? Okay, let's have a look at his stats. CPU 67%. I don't know. So jump on one of the VMs, have a look at the CPU, process monitor, and just have a look what's going on. Sometimes when they're going idle, could be I don't know, AV scanning, something going on in the background there. I would have thought. That's where image optimization helps if you've not done that also, because it takes out a lot of those background processes, which can sometimes be a bit of a pain. CPU 25%. Yeah, so fire up process monitor and have a look what process is doing that 25% CPU. That may give you a clue. Okay. Is there anything else out of anyone? Interesting A&F scaling mentioned earlier. Who was presenter? That was Kirk Ryan.
That was me.
Yep, he's still here.
Yeah.
So yeah, Neil, get in touch with Kirk. These details are on the presentation slides. So will the slides be shared? Yes, this event is recorded. So I know my slides are. Kirk, are you happy to have your slides shared?
Of course, yeah. No problems.
Yeah. Shabaz?
Yeah, all good. No problem. Don't
Okay.
share anything.
So yeah, good. If you yeah, so we'll arrange for the slides to be shared. I'm not sure where yet, but I'll find somewhere to put them, and I'll post the video probably onto YouTube after some editing stuff. So looking forward to any sessions MS Apatatsu. Yes, we are definitely going to do some sessions on MSX Apatatsu. Maybe for the next one, if that's a popular one that people want to see. Obviously, MSX Apatatsu is still in public preview. Still a bit clunky, but we can show where it's at now and hopefully discuss where it's going to be in the future. Is FS Loss getting renamed? Not that I'm aware of. Tom?
No, not that I'm aware of either. It will be, the plan is to integrate it into the Azure portal, so you don't have to manage it separately. But I haven't heard anything about a name change, but who knows?
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Okay, good. Cool. Well, I think we'll end it there. 2 hours. People are going to be thirsty and hungry and stuff. So thanks for coming, everyone. And we will see you in 4 weeks' time. Goodbye.
Thanks. Cheers, Neil.
Bye.
Joe, if you're still on, just to quickly answer your question, no on-prem servers, no AD. What would like to, what would be possible to do without using Azure ADVs? Again, yeah, I believe it is the way I've got it to work. It is, I don't know if it's a workaround or what, but essentially, if you've got a VPN to your on premises, oh, sorry, no, your questions, is it without, okay, without, so using Azure AD without Azure AD domain services, that's your question, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's literally a small customer, a couple of small customers who probably have about 10 users who just have Microsoft 365 subscriptions, but we're looking for potentially having desktops in the cloud so they can keep on using old laptops, etc.
Yeah.
So it's really just to see, is it? I mean, I did a proof of concept before, and we had to use Azure Active Directory domain services, but I'm just wondering, will Microsoft ever get away from that at all? So you can just literally rent a desktop in the cloud,
Yeah, the problem is obviously Azure AD's there's like it's hash passwords, so you can't join the VMs, or you can't join them to that type of domain. It needs like that Kerberos and NTLM. And that's where your Azure AD DS comes in. So again, I don't personally know, but I doubt it would be.
Right. Okay. Okay. Cool. Beginner's question, but that's great. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for tonight. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.